All right, so welcome to my talk on why Meteor. It's just kind of my overview of what makes it attractive and interesting and why you should give it a try. So um, this is all just kind of based on my experience so far that I've had over the almost 2 years at this point with Meteor. So if you don't know me, I've made some big bets on Meteor. I do the Meteor podcast. I run a news site called Creator.io. I've got a weekly newsletter that I do I call it Meteor.js.club. And then you can find me on Twitter and GitHub as well. And so I do full-time work with Meteor. I do half my time spent in contracting, and the other time is spent on creating educational products and whatnot, giving talks, that kind of thing. So what is Meteor? It is, I guess it started as a framework, but I would say that it's become more than a framework. It's actually become a full-on platform. It started as like, hey, let's build this client server framework, but then when you start adding in things like Cordova, well, really being able to glue together like Node and client side and getting it all working seamlessly made it very easy for them to do things like adding Cordova in and getting all that kind of rich support there. So I consider it more of a platform now. And this is kind of an overview of what it looks like. If you look here, like when you download and install Meteor and you type Meteor run, this is kind of what happens here. If you go to the right, this is the normal Meteor path. If you go to the left, this is going to be what happens when Cordova starts as well. So we'll walk through the right and then we'll get over to the left. But a Meteor app is really just, it starts a server and it uses nodes, or Node.js. It uses fibers, which makes Node synchronous, so you can. It's a little more approachable for people who don't maybe want to deal with the asynchronous nature of Node. There's also some other libraries they built, like LiveQuery, which handles the back and forth for with Mongo. So when you do a query, you want it to be reactive and responsive. LiveQuery is kind of the library handling that. And then, is everything okay? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, all right.
Good.
Oops, I guess I'm sharing you guys, not my slides. There we go. So the communication between the client and the server happens through this protocol called DDP, Dynamic Data Protocol, and it helps ship the data back and forth over WebSockets. And so we've got this data on the wire idea where we're not sending just a huge chunk of HTML over to the browser like older kind of server-side rendering frameworks do, like Rails. We're actually just sending some JavaScript and some HTML is being knit together using data that's sent over DDP. And so they use eJSON is the serialization protocol that they use. It's just JSON that's been extended to support things like dates, and you can extend it to support other object types as well if you want. But basically, it's just handling the translation from the server to the client. And so when your client actually types in a browser address there, they're actually pulling down some HTML, some CSS, some JavaScript, and the client portion of Meteor starts, and it uses things like Blaze. There's a reactive version of handlebars called Spacebars, Tracker. There's an in-memory version of Mongo called Mini Mongo. It allows you to run queries against it, but everything's just kept in the memory, and so that's that's all the data that's transferred over DDP using eJSON. That's what mini Mongo is. And so, DDP is just this way for these two to kind of talk back and forth. And you have methods, so you can like make a method call from the browser client to the server. And the other cool thing that happens is, you've got this hot code reload. So if you deploy new code, it's constantly keeping track of which version of the application you're running. And if there's a new version, it's going to detect that and tell the client to load the new version. So it's kind of nice to get code kind of flowing over that way automatically. And so the other great thing is if you do want Cordova, you just say like Meteor Ad Platform iOS or Meteor Ad Platform Android, and all of a sudden it's going to start downloading some libraries that it needs, and it's going to spin up, if you're doing iOS, it'll spin up the iOS simulator, compile the app, and push that to the simulator, and then it connects back to the server here, and it just acts like another browser almost, but then you can get access to, you can use Cordova packages, and you can get access to the phone APIs and that kind of thing. So it starts to become very interesting when you can easily add in things like Cordova. So for me, I had the I don't know, I guess the pleasure or displeasure of watching someone actually try to convert from Meteor to the mean stack because they were frustrated with hiring people in Meteor, which I think is a problem that's already fixing itself. But watching them do it, I watched them spend multiple weeks, kind of fighting with how to glue everything together. And so to me, on the left you've got Meteor, and then on the right you've got the mean stack. And in order to equal the value of Meteor on the left, you got to spend time kind of stacking up all these pieces on the right. And there's at any given time in this framework, you could change out Node for Rails if you wanted, or for Ruby, and then Express would be Rails. You could use Mongo if you want. You could change out that database if you need to. There's Grunt or Gulp. There's multiple pub sub library options in every framework or language that you're looking at. And then you've got Angular on top of that. And then maybe you're going to start looking at OAuth libraries, and you got to figure out how to glue all that together on your own. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff that I think you're getting for free. And I think there are people that are interested in maybe doing the stuff on the right and building it. But for me, when I want to develop a web app, I want to spend time just building that web app. I don't want to spend a lot of time on the infrastructure. So to me, that makes Meteor very, very interesting. The other great thing is, because we get all this glue has been done for us, it makes it very easy to get started quickly and rapidly prototype something. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that Meteor is good for prototyping. I think it goes a lot deeper than that, but it is really, really good for prototyping and building something brand new. So I'm finding that what used to take something like 8 to 12 weeks to kind of get testable MVP out the door, not very polished with Rails, is now taking 6 to 8 weeks to get out the door with Meteor. So, I'm finding, I guess, a 25% reduction in time there overall for getting an MVP out the door. So, I do think that is strong, and that was a goal of Meteor. They wanted to make it easier to build applications, and I think they're accomplishing that every day with every new release. So this is Atmosphere. I think Meteor's got a great packaging system, and this is a big part of the power of it. It's very easy to package up functionality if you need it. So you can push HTML and CSS and JavaScript to the client. You can package things up to run on the server. Like, there's a lot of interesting things you can do there. And the great thing is, like, this is a great example of a package that took the Stripe NPM package, wrapped it up, and made some pages available. So you could go to like a billing page and you could see, you just drop this into your SaaS app and you could see like receipts that were being synced over using the API. And because we relied on the NPM package, we got all the webhook kind of calling for free. So Stripe, you would get some URLs that Stripe could hit and update your application, and it would do the right thing under the covers. So it would like find the user account associated with this billing ID, and it would update it and say, hey, we just charged that user and that kind of thing, and your app would know that it was up to date. And this was something that could be built because there's NPM integration there. And I didn't add the slide, but there's also Cordova integration. So you can go to I think it's plugins.cordova.org, and you can add in any Cordova plugin that you want. You can add in geolocation, which is a core plugin, and you get kind of like this isomorphic interface that allows you to make one call. So I can ask the browser for the current location, and if the client allows me to get that location, then I'll get some geo coordinates back, which I can do something with. And the awesome thing is I don't have to worry about what platform I'm on. It doesn't matter if it's the Chrome browser, Firefox browser. It doesn't matter if it's the iOS phone or Android phone. Like, I make the same call in my code, and under the covers, Cordova's handling it and doing the right thing with it. So I think, to me, web apps have changed fundamentally, and probably the last 8 years, 7 years, something in that range. You look at when Facebook and Twitter came out, we started to get into this range of kind of like dynamically updating applications. Maybe it's only been 5 years, but people are coming to expect that they're going to see little updates on the page, and maybe it's, hey, there's a couple new posts, and you click a link, and something on the page updates. But people want to see kind of these reactions. Are their friends online? Can they chat with them? There's even my parents are using Facebook and starting to understand what a rich client interface should be. And I think, between that and the ubiquity of kind of phones everywhere and native applications, like, people are going to demand that you build something richer than what a server-side framework can necessarily deliver. So I think another reason that Meteor is great is that it's just JavaScript. It's JavaScript on the back end, it's JavaScript on the front end, and we're able to rely on all kinds of tools like NPM that I mentioned before, Cordova, or a bunch of interesting things. But I think JavaScript is still like the #1 language. I was looking on a website called GitHut, H-U-T, .info, I believe, and they have stats for like each quarter for the last couple years, and as of the fourth quarter of 2014, JavaScript had the most active repositories on GitHub with like 323,000 repos, and that's a trend that just keeps continuing. Like, its growth curve is just on an upward trend, and I don't think that's going to change. So, I think because it's JavaScript, it makes it easier to hire people, right? Because everyone kind of knows JavaScript. Because JavaScript it's everywhere, right? Like, you've got desktop, you've got mobile, you've got it's on the server now even, and we're able to do interesting things by having that same language in all these spots. And I think it's going to become even more vitally important, because as mobile takes off, you've got kind of like 2 or 3 competing platforms in iOS and Android and Windows, and we need a way to build for all those platforms, but not necessarily have 3 separate code bases. Like, that's not something someone wants to maintain. Sorry, needed a drink. I also think JavaScript is a gateway drug. Hold on, I'm gonna mute you there for a second. I'm getting like feedback here. Can you mute yourself? Thank you. Awesome. All right. So yeah, JavaScript is a gateway drug, and I think that whenever I look at working with other people, I know how to build a well-functioning backend, and I know how to build kind of like a reactive client front end from the standpoint of the JavaScript code, but I'm not a designer. I'm actually quite bad at design, and so the interesting thing to me is when you bring a designer in, a lot of them, they'll know HTML and CSS, but if they're pretty good at HTML and CSS, the thing that I've noticed is they know a little JavaScript. They've come at it through jQuery and installing jQuery plugins and configuring it, and they start to learn as a necessity. And I think, for me, like I started at the back end with Rails and kind of worked my way to the, writing obviously just HTML for the templates, but then something interesting started to happen when the shift started. I guess it was around 2011 with Backbone for me. We started building richer client-side front ends, and I started to dabble into JavaScript, and so it's definitely kind of lured me in. And then on the flip side, you've got these designers who know jQuery, and then they feel a little more comfortable in something like Meteor because it can feel familiar to them or natural to them to have this kind of client-side templating that's built with JavaScript. And so my comparison was a recent designer that I worked with. We tried to get some apps done in Rails. He was struggling to understand the concepts and really get it running on his machine, and he always had to ask questions, and he just generally felt lost. But we made the switch to Meteor, and he picked it up right away, and he actually started maintaining the differential Meteor boilerplate. He started. He's even now comfortable to the point where he's writing his own application with no help from any other developers, and he's been working with the Instagram API and developing a new application, and he's been doing all of it without any help. And to me, that's an amazing thing. Like that's a really, really strong thing to see happen. So. I also think that the community around Meteor is pretty amazing. I mean, I'm giving a talk to you guys in Casablanca from my house and in Cincinnati, Ohio, and I think that that's happening because there's strong ties that have been put in place by the Meteor community team that has allowed this communication and this information transfer to happen, these connections that I don't think have necessarily ever happened before. Being in the Ruby world, you would fly someone in to give these talks, or I might know the major movers and shakers, but as a person, it wasn't easy for me to get a hold of someone and get someone interesting to give a talk. So, and this picture in particular is another great thing that they do with the community as well, which is this is Dev Shop, and so. They host this once a month in San Francisco, and they open their doors at like 2 p.m. and just let people come in, and they've got a screen up on the board, and if you've got questions, you can ask those questions, and there are people like experts that are there donating their time, and they're willing to help and try to get you unstuck and that kind of thing. And then they do that for about 4 hours, and then dinner shows up, and they cater in delicious food, and you can hang out and chat and talk and eat and have a good time. And then at 7 o'clock they start major talks, and They do an hour of 2 talks, and then they do some lightning talks, and they record the whole thing on YouTube. So even sitting in Casablanca or Cincinnati, we can participate and give comments and tweets and all kinds of stuff. And this happens the last Thursday of every month generally. And I've been out there 3 times for this, and it's been an amazing experience in person. But I generally watch this every month because I want to see what's going on. I want to see what people are working on, and it's really interesting because now we have this vast library on YouTube as well, which I think is great. And the people that I talk to when I'm there, or the people that I meet at our meetups there, they're just very open and welcoming and accepting and helpful, and that's maybe different than other communities that I've been part of in the past. So this picture here, this is actually how I came to learn about Meteor, having done 9 years in Rails. This is from Railscast Pro, and Ryan Bates did this interesting thing where he built the same application over and over and over again in different client-side frameworks, and it took him 2 episodes, and it took him 2 episodes to do Ember, 2 episodes to do Backbone, 2 episodes to do Angular, but it took him 1 episode to do Meteor. And you can see here, like, somewhere on the page it says the Meteor was 15 minutes, but the second episode of Ember was 14 minutes. So he accomplished in half the time what it took him to accomplish in Meteor to accomplish in in double the time in Ember, Angular, and Backbone. And I think that speaks volumes because there's no back-end setup. Everything's just there, and it just works with this framework. And I think it was easier for him to accomplish everything that he wanted to accomplish in the front end for Meteor. And I won't say that you're going to see a 50% speed improvement getting started, but I do think that 30 to 40% is realistic if you know JavaScript well enough. And to me, that's interesting. I think that savings, when you're building an application, that savings can mean that you have more dollars in the bank or more time on your side to kind of pivot and find that product market fit and build something that the community wants. And that's not something that we've had a lot of before. I mean, everyone was excited about Rails because it was going to be this big time saver and conventions over configuration and all that kind of stuff. And I would say Meteor's actually taken that a step further and provided us with a modern development environment. So, any questions? You guys still there? I can't hear you at all. I'm sorry. I think one of the computers is muted there.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my question is Meteor enterprise-friendly framework, such as Java?
Yes, I would say, yeah, I would definitely say yes. Some people would, I mean, so I know this much. There are enterprises that are starting to dabble in it, and the interesting thing to them is being able to build a mobile application for 2 different platforms using 1 code base. And so I think that is going to be a super interesting thing. Or I guess even 3 platforms, right? Like you've got the web, iOS, and Android. And so, yeah, I think it's definitely getting there. I think Mongo is a piece that maybe scares people, and so they're worried that they need SQL, or they've got to have some relational database. And so I think you'll see a lot more Meteor adoption when they decide to add another database in the enterprise anyway.
I think they will get more. Meteor will get more closer to the enterprise if it adopts MySQL as a database. I think
Yeah, I would agree.
enterprises are afraid of no SQL.
Yeah, I would say it's either going to be MySQL or it's going to be PostgreSQL. I think maybe Postgres seems more likely just because it's got the tools that people may want to use for kind of enterprise-y type SQL stuff.
Yeah. Let me hand over the mic. Someone
Sure.
else has got a question.
Well, hi. Josh, I have several questions, but I'll begin with one,
Sure.
particularly. Even if Meteor is a full stack, framework, or more than that, of course, more than a framework, but it's a full stack tool. Can it integrate with other stacks, especially server side? Like standard Node.js application can.
Yeah. So I think yes. DDP is likely going to be that gateway integration point, but if you actually draw out, the pieces of Meteor communicating from the database all the way to the client, you can kind of draw some cut points there, and there's some interesting ideas where you could do it with DDP, or you could implement something on the client, or you could do it through just working with the Mongo database and filling that up. There's a number of ways that you can kind of create this interoperability, but I definitely think that DDP is going to be the most interesting way going forward. I've actually seen, I haven't seen it personally, but there's a dev shop video out there about some guys who are working with an electron microscope, and they've created this legacy DDP client that allows them to communicate with the electron microscope. And so they're slicing little thin slices of rat brains, and they're using the electron microscope to inspect those, and they're using a Meteor app to kind of control the microscope and get the images back. And that's very interesting to me, and I think that we'll see more of that in the future, like Ruby DDP or Erlang DDP, or something along those lines.
Okay.
Hey Josh, how you doing?
Good. How are you?
Hey, my name is Ahmed Zrikam. I'm from Morocco, obviously. I spent a lot of time in stateside. Yeah, so my question is, maturity-wise, I mean, how mature is Meteor?
Sure. So I mean, it's been around since 2012, I guess, is when it got started. I would say maturity-wise, it's actually very mature. I said something on the podcast the other day, instead of necessarily test-driven development or behavior-driven development, I believe that the Meteor development group is like a meticulous, detail-driven development organization. They're very, very particular about putting out a high-quality product and strong APIs that make sense, and they take their time when they find a problem. Even if you look at the last dev shop, with 1.0 coming out, they came out with a new packaging system, and that introduced some wonkiness, and it was a little. I feel like it should have maybe been fixed before 1.0, but here they are in March, and it was released in December, or I guess November. We're coming out with 1.04 and 1.1 soon, and they've rewritten the constraint solver, and they've realized that what they had originally wrote wasn't good enough, and so they've gone back and made a commitment to write something that's, you know, an industrial grade kind of constraint solver. And David Greenspan gave a great talk on it about Minisat and how it works and what it does, and very interesting technology to see, and I'm super glad that he's putting it in place. So basically, when I install a package, I can, and you know, the versions file that I share with you, and if we're both developing, like, I can be ensured that you're going to install the same package versions that I have, and that's important. So.
Okay. All right. So as a startup that is mainly based on Node.js and Angular, I mean, how would you, like, do you have any recommendations if we decide to move the Meteor way?
Yeah. I would number one, I would highly recommend taking a look at, again, the dev shop video from this past month. Had a guy named Uri talking about building Angular and Meteor together, and you know, he's got all kinds of like services that he's built up that expose some of the Meteor stuff into Angular. Like, he's got a $ Meteor service and that kind of thing. So you know, he's done a lot of work to make that good, and you know, he likes Angular, and he's got a number of Angular developers available and as part of his team, and so as a dev shop, they want to be able to use both together. And I would highly recommend, you know, looking up the February 2015 dev shop video and watch Uri's talk and just try to understand like what he's doing, and that's probably a good way to start to get into Meteor, in my opinion. So you're just kind of changing out a little bit of the client, and then mostly just kind of like the back-end node piece. But that might be a good way to kind of segue into.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Yeah.
Josh, me again. I have a question about front-end performance. Front-end performance. I've played very little with Meteor, and I tried both sample apps. You know, maybe they're not perfect, but I also checked Telescope. It's a Meteor. It's Meteor developed with Meteor. Well, all the JavaScript, of course, and the CSS and the views are packaged and sent to the client you know, at connection. So it's not maybe for a hybrid app. Well, packaged with Cordova is perfect in my opinion. But for a web app, technically accessed through the browser, it's not very efficient performance-wise. What do you think about it? Maybe I understood it wrong, but what's your opinion about this?
I think, you know, someone actually put together a good, gosh, I wish I could remember where it was at. He put together a great little repo, but basically at the React conference this year, someone gave a talk and kind of showed off Angular and React and I want to say one other framework. Maybe it was Ember. That's what it was. And he was like updating. Basically, it was just like generated database queries, but it was like a database dashboard, kind of showing all the activity going on in your database. And he faked all that out and just was updating like the client side of it using tools for each of those frameworks. And you know, React was super snappy. But Ember like had some memory leaks, and Angular was pretty good, but it was nowhere near what React was in regards to performance. And the interesting thing is that you know, someone went and basically recreated that with Meteor, and you know, the performance, I think it was a little better than Angular, but not where React was at from the video I saw. But probably the most interesting thing to me was the fact that once you started Meteor, it used 9 megs of memory, which was the smallest of all the memory footprints, and it stayed at 9 megs of memory. So there was never a change. Like, it was just this flat line. Like, it had this little memory bar down at the bottom. That's how we knew Ember had a memory leak in it. But it stayed flat, and that was interesting to me as well. And so I think there hasn't been a lot of conscious effort to optimize Blaze necessarily, or even as you suggested, like optimize the package delivery size of a Meteor application. Like, by default, I think when you put together a Meteor app with Cordova, I think you're looking at something like 500K that's going to be shipped down to the client in JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, and that's without adding a bunch of your own code or packages. So yeah, I think there's maybe some stuff that can be done in regards to performance to make it even better, but I haven't found that to be a major stopping point up till now.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Hey, I'd like to know, how do you see AngularJS cooperation kind of thing with Meteor? Has AngularJS lost some territory, or is it still a good framework to adopt with Meteor?
Yeah, I think it's still a good framework to adopt with Meteor personally. Like I mentioned, Uri gave that great talk at DevShop that I would highly recommend watching. I also think, like, for me, I'm a Meteor guy. Like, I started to dabble into Angular, and then I found Meteor and just decided, like, that was enough for me on the front end. But I definitely know, like, there's a strong community and kind of a head start on packages and support in Angular. They're one of the top started repositories on GitHub, and if you look at Stack Overflow on a 30-day cycle, like, they get probably the largest amount of questions for any particular framework. So there's definitely a big community there, and I think it's worth, Meteor's committed to figuring out what's the best way to make Angular or React work in the browser with Meteor, and they want you to have that choice available. So I would not be surprised to see stuff coming out in 1.2 later this year that makes it even easier to get Meteor working, or get Angular working with Meteor.
I think AngularJS likes consuming REST web services, while Meteor doesn't provide REST web services, if I'm not wrong. So I don't see how they can collaborate.
So I mean, consuming REST web services, again, like, you're starting to get out of my territory here, but again, I would suggest taking a look at that talk Yuri gave, because it really starts to dive a little bit deeper on how you can get Meteor and Angular to work together. But the other interesting thing is there's actually a number of packages out there to expose your Meteor backend as a REST service if you need to. There used to be RESTstop, and then there's another one called, actually, now I gotta look, GitHub, RESTstop. Sorry, I'll just find it here real quick. Restivus, that's the name of the package. So there's a package called Restivus. It's RESTIVUS, and yeah, I would give that a look. And so you're able to basically just configure it to mount up and expose a lot of your data as REST endpoints if you need to. And the other interesting thing is, too, you can consume, if you want to, you can easily consume REST endpoints using the HTTP package that the Meteor group has built. So I wouldn't let that be a stopper. I think that's easy enough to figure out.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Any other questions?
Hi, Josh.
Hey.
I have a question for you.
Sure.
So, firstly, what is more efficient to use Meteor for backend, or, for example, use Angular and PHP for backend? What's the more efficient in terms of security?
Well, I'm obviously biased, so I'm going to say Meteor. I would say in terms of like efficiency while coding for security, I would say that's probably not, that has nothing to do with PHP or nothing to do with Meteor. That has to do with how you think as a programmer and how you kind of feel about the platform. I would say like anything that's brand new to you, it's going to be harder for you to understand the security implications of. So, you know, there's going to be some amount of research that you're going to need to do to understand that. You know, I've seen a number of highly trained, talented programmers who have made some stupid security mistakes, and that has nothing to do with the framework necessarily. That has to do with them either not paying attention or maybe not understanding that part of the framework, or, you know, there's a number of things that can lead to that. So, does that help?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, thanks, Josh. I think that's it. There's no more questions. We really thank you deeply for this inspiring talk and hope to have you next time. Okay?
Yeah,
You
sure.
can help us grow in this community.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, guys.
Okay. Can we just take a selfie together?
I don't know how to do that, but okay.